What an amazing 24 hours across the Carolinas. That's not just sand on the beach, that's snow. And we'll take you to the Outer Banks where they pulled in the winner at 9 inches of snow. This is a special live edition of the Carolina Weather Group. And it is Wednesday, January the 22nd, 2025. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. We've got Tom Miner here in Charlotte. Jared Smith soaking up all the snow in Charleston, South Carolina, and keeping an eye on things from the state capitol. We've got Frank Strait. We also have video from Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach, where he flew his drone today over the white sands or white flakes of Myrtle Beach. What an unusual scene as we've got snow at the South Carolina beaches. We've got snow at the North Carolina beaches. And Tom and I got like this much.
Hey, it was more than the snow we had. The snow we had back on the 10th. So
this so true.
We're making the right direction.
Especially,
I did a little better. I got about that much. An inch and a quarter.
Okay, well,
roughly.
Frank, before we went live, you were talking about the icy road conditions. So we'll let folks know that we are going to go through some of the winners or losers of the big snowfall amounts here coming up in a few minutes. But big impacts, I think, for a lot of people would have been travel. So what was it like in Columbia on the roads this morning, Frank?
It was really, really icy. Okay, so where I live, it's a little bit north of Gaston, South Carolina, and the main road that takes you north from Gaston toward Columbia is US 321. You go south on it, you end up eventually in Hardeeville, and where it meets I-95. But anyway, getting out of my neighborhood, I expected the roads to be snow covered, and they were. I was hoping that the road crews would do a somewhat better job with 321, but that was not the case. It was a sheet of ice. The maximum safe speed might have been 25. It was probably less than that. So that's about what I was doing, going from my house to SCEMD headquarters where I work today. And on the way, there was about a 3-mile stretch of US 321 that I was traveling, and there were 3 accidents along the way. One lady driving a pickup was obviously going too fast, ended up way off the road. There was another 3-vehicle chain reaction sort of fender bender, and then there was another vehicle that had slid off the road and appeared to be in drivable condition, but stuck and had to get pulled out by a tow truck. So that's what I was up against, along with everybody else who was trying to get around Columbia this morning, is that the roads were really icy.
Jared Smith, I understand the Ravenel Bridge has reopened after closing yesterday due to winter weather. How are things holding up in Charleston?
Well, it's pretty icy. It's pretty gnarly. But it does look better. The Ravenel certainly looks a lot better than it did last night. However, we're already getting into the refreeze. We're already into the mid-20s here, and we are headed for a record low tomorrow morning, potentially. The National Weather Service forecast is 15 degrees.
Wow.
The record is 19. So we very well may blow that away with all the snowpack there. And again, black ice is going to be an issue for the next several days. And so if you don't have to travel, probably not the best time to do it. But you can see all that snow cover right there on the Cistern Yard at College of Charleston. There's Randolph Hall there. Really a fun sight last night, seeing everybody go out, making snow angels, throwing snowballs, having a good time. And there was a lot of that today. I had several people driving past my house.
Throwing snowballs at you?
Well, no, they weren't throwing snowballs at me. I mean, I probably deserve it, but they were driving their golf carts and then towing like boogie boards, inflatables, whatever they could find to sled. They were towing it behind them because, of course, there's barely any hills. The only hills that we have go right into the water, and well, Polar Plunge is not feeling too good today. So
no. Yeah.
It was quite a day, and a lot of that going around, a lot of people driving around, trying to have some fun with it. There was a guy snowboarding down the Ravenel earlier today.
That doesn't even sound safe, but I appreciate the spirit. That reminds me so much, and we'll talk about the snow totals not only here in the Carolinas but across the whole Southeast, of what we saw in New Orleans, of people down in the French Quarter snowboarding and skiing.
There's video of this all over social media, by the way.
There's somebody
Yeah, I'm
playing
sure.
ice hockey.
Yeah,
French
ice
Yeah,
hockey.
playing ice hockey, skating
Yeah.
around, and
Amazing.
I love
Bourbon
that, by
Street.
the way, because I love things like that. Because if you see somebody playing ice hockey on the road, you probably know, oh yeah, no, I'm not driving there.
Yeah, no, not a very good idea. Yeah, let's start with the big picture, and you can see some of the snow totals. We're going to talk about some of the really impressive numbers we got here in the Carolinas, but when you start wide, it gives you the perspective of like, wow,
Look at that.
look at this. If you're listening on our audio podcast, we're showing a map right now stretching from Texas to the Carolinas with snowfall, but we've got yellows and oranges and even some reds in portions of Louisiana, the panhandle of Florida, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, South Georgia. That represents snowfall amounts not only of 6, 7, 8 inches, but almost 12 inches of snow in some of these places that not just beat a record, but smashed a record. Absolutely incredible. Now, here,
It was pretty much a blizzard in New Orleans. If you take a look at the observations from the lakefront airport, New Orleans, they were having frequent gusts to 35, 40, 45 miles an hour while the heavy snow was falling, quarter mile visibility. So that qualifies as a blizzard, I think, anyway.
The Lake Charles Weather Service actually was issuing blizzard warnings.
Yeah, they had
yesterday.
a blizzard warning out. First time they've ever issued one, or anywhere else along the Gulf Coast for that matter.
Wow. And Sam Walker on our show last week was talking about the possibility of getting blizzard-like conditions out on the Outer Banks, because again, that's really, when we say blizzard, we're talking about the lack of visibility created by blowing snow. And you can see that here in some of the video he shot at the Wrights Brothers Memorial Monument here in Kill Devil Hills out on the Outer Banks, where they recorded the highest snowfall amount in the Carolinas from this storm system with 9 inches. And just an incredible day, a very, very, very frigid day. We have not been above freezing in many places for going on days now. We'll take a look at some of the other video that Sam shot here. You can actually look. This is out on the Currituck Sound, and I think he's got several inches of snow there. And here it was coming down last night. This is, I think, what Tom and I saw last night at about sunset or a little thereafter in South Charlotte. That gave us about that quarter inch of snow. But just take a look at some of these roads out there on the Outer Banks as Sam was driving around. I mean, again, I cannot get over the fact that eastern North Carolina, coastal regions of South Carolina got more snow than the Piedmont, more snow than the mountains, just because of the way this was set up. Let's look at those snowfall amounts. So again, here's North Carolina for you. You can see 9 inches out there in the Outer Banks. So much of the Outer Banks, from the Virginia border back on down through Atlantic Beach, at least 6 inches of snow, if not more. All the way out to that I-95 corridor, we had at least 5 inches of snow. We got at least an inch of snow as you make your way inland as far east as Raleigh-Durham, just beyond Fayetteville, kind of coming close to Union County, North Carolina, and Monroe, but not quite. Probably cuts off there at about Anson County or so. And as we move this map down to South Carolina, you can see, again, 6.8 inches of snow just outside of Myrtle Beach, 5 inches of snow in that video that we were showing you from Scotty Powell along Myrtle Beach. Charleston coming in about 4 inches, Columbia coming in at about 1.2, and even upstate South Carolina recording about half an inch. So, Jared, let me ask you how this verifies, because on our special edition of Carolina Weather Group on Sunday night, when we still had a chance that this thing could go high, low, or right down the middle, we were looking at the National Weather Service forecast on Sunday. It said 4 inches for Monk's Corner. Jared, I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, you're muting.
You pulled a Scotty.
I pulled a Scotty. It was bound to happen.
Somebody has to.
Somebody's got to do it. It may as well be me. But yeah, no, it was it was interesting how it worked out. Actually, pretty much worked out kind of as we expected, honestly. The warm nose did not quit for some.
And we got a little sleet mixed in.
A ton of sleet in some spots, and that was unfortunate. I was among the victims of that. I had about 2.7 inches at my place. Took a couple measurements and averaged them together, and that's what I ended up with. My snow to liquid ratio was like 2 2-1, 2.1 to 1. So that's a good sign that I got sleeted out the wazoo. Some spots just, along the coast, they had a sleet storm, mostly with a little bit of snow to top it off. But when you got into that Somerville, Monk's Corner cross where that 6-inch LSR came in, when you got into those areas, that's where we saw some pretty good amounts. That's where we saw, less of the mixing. We were, for an hour last night, we were tracking the warm nose kind of live using radar.
You were live right here on Carolina Weather Group YouTube for anybody that missed you.
Yeah, and so we were looking at the melting aloft, and that actually did a really good job of kind of like predicting where the the melting was and where it wasn't, was a good predictor on snow totals. So yeah, so there's that sounding, and the thing that we're looking at, with that, the thing that we were looking at with that sounding, that this is like a little jut of the temperature. See that red line there? That red line's temperature. That green line is dew point, and when that's a skew T log P, and then it's traveling along a blue line there, and that dotted blue line is the freezing level. And when you see that red line intersect that blue line, right around the 850 millibar marker, that is your warm nose. And that is what was the difference for a lot of folks between a heck of a snowstorm and sleet.
It'll make or break it every time. But I'm still impressed that you got 3 or 4 inches, as I'm also impressed by Frank Straight's ability to tell a straight here like John Madden on the Skew T. I mean, I think that's what people show up for each week. That and visits from Stormy, the weather cat. Who made a very popular appearance in your newsletter today, Frank. So it was good to see that.
Yes, she did. Yeah, she was. I threw her out in the snow this morning, and which she wasn't happy about at first, but then she decided to explore it a little bit. And after about 5 minutes, she's like, "Oh, no, let's go back inside, Dad."
Trisha watching
the other
us.
cat said the same thing.
Too cold. Trisha watching on YouTube, 4 inches there in West Ashley. Crushed ice, Trisha writes, mixed with snow last night. Heavy at times. Mrs. Ed 3 on YouTube. My son in Somerville. He said about 2 or 3 inches at his house. That sounds about right there. So feel free to join the conversation tonight with us on Facebook and YouTube. We'd love to know how much snow you got. Let's look more at this video that Scotty Powell shot out there at Myrtle Beach, because it's so cool to see some of these very well-known beaches, the boardwalks, the Ferris wheel, and the landmarks out there, not just with a dusting of snow, but like half an inch of snow. That's like actual measurable snowfall. And I'm saying that as somebody who grew up in New York. Like that in my book is like, yep, it snowed. And is sticking around because of these very, very frigid temperatures. We actually have a question in our chat asking when some of this is expected to melt. I know, Frank Strait, in your newsletter, you've been writing about the forecast, keeping an eye on things across South Carolina. So I saw some melting of my 1/4 inch of snow here in Charlotte today, not because we got above freezing, but just we got just enough sunlight on it. But what are you thinking, Frank, in terms of those icy road conditions and what's left over?
Well, there's going to be some trouble with icy roads for a little while. How about bringing the snow accumulation map for South Carolina back up so we can talk more about that?
Ask and you shall receive.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so this 1.3 inches next to Columbia, that's my report, by the way. That's my house. So anyway, these lighter blue areas where only an inch and a half fell, snow is mostly gone already in those areas. Now there's some shady spots. We're in the shade today. The snow didn't really melt in those areas, melted a little bit, but it's already frozen back up. Like here in Columbia, my house is 21 right now. Heading down to about probably 14 tonight. So it's already frozen back up. So there are some icy patches around the Midlands along the I-20 corridor, especially over toward Florence, where there was a little bit more snow than the rest of the upper PD. Up in the upstate, you probably find tonight, unless there was a shady spot here or there that the snow didn't melt, but I'm pretty sure it mostly did. Just be careful if you're out. Now, as you go further southeast, roads didn't really clear up today across South Carolina's part of the coastal plain. So the DOT, I'm sure, got the main roads, the interstates clear, probably most of the main highways, other highways clear. main roads in town probably got cleared as well. Neighborhood streets, nope. Back roads and other secondary roads, nope. They've still got snow and ice on them. And so they're icy tonight. We'll have another cycle where it melts tomorrow, but problem tomorrow is that it's going to be cloudy. There's a little weak storm that's moving offshore, thankfully staying offshore, because if it were much further west than we thought, and it's kind of getting going down here right now, and we'll spawn low pressure here tonight that'll move up that away. I could, I have a telestrator. I could just draw that in there. Low pressure is going to form
which
out
way
here
is
tonight.
that way?
I should use red for this. Oh, I'm not allowed to do that because I'm a cheapskate. So anyway, this black area of low pressure is going to go that way. And as a result, that moisture is going to stay offshore, and so it's not going to be a problem in terms of freezing rain, as we feared might happen a few days ago. But instead, it'll keep things cloudy and slow the melting process along the coast tomorrow. And so there's still going to be a good bit of snow and ice on those roads that did not, where the snow doesn't melt during the day, where you had 5 and 6 inches of snow. There's going to be a lot of icy patches in those areas again tomorrow night into Friday morning. Now Friday's going to be a touch warmer, and with the sun out, there'll be another upper level trough. That's it back here, by the way, over the Intermountain West. There's some clouds with it, but it's largely moisture starved, and when it gets to us, it'll only be a few clouds. However, it'll be cold, not as cold as tomorrow, but still cold. So we'll melt a little bit more snow, but there could still potentially be a few icy patches along the coastal plain Friday night into Saturday morning. Here and there would be isolated, but it'll be something to watch out for. So if you're totally struck with cabin fever by the time Friday night rolls around and you want to go out to dinner, you'll have to be careful, especially on the neighborhood streets that are shaded most of the time during the day.
Cabin fever was definitely always a problem growing up in New York. At a certain point, the leftover snow is no longer white. It turns brown. It turns yellow. And you're like, can I just go outside now? That's 2 mentions of New York. I won't make any more, I promise.
Yeah. Well, we'll mention State College, which is the same way there. We usually during the winter, there's about a 6-week period, oftentimes longer, where there's snow on the ground. In State College, you tend to get a nickel and dime kind of snow event each day. Every other day, you get a half inch. 2 days later, there's an inch, and 2 days later, there's a quarter inch, and it adds up over time. And if you go a while without those snows, then it gets dirty and nasty and ugly, and you wish it would melt, but it doesn't because it's 12 degrees. That's why I call the place a frozen wasteland. But
Frank is clearly not on the tourism board.
Just
actually, in the summer, it's nice. You get breaks
it
from the heat and humidity. You have to listen to the locals gripe when it's 84, but that's not a problem for me.
Gonna wheel Frank back in here.
But this time of year, it kind of sucks because there's snow on the ground and it's cloudy all the time.
Yeah. You know what? What we are having this January with a light flurry here, accumulations there. This will be my third and final mention, I guess, of what I like having a taste of winter. I think this is why I live in the Carolinas and not further south, where your chances of snow are usually slim to none. Although don't ask me what happened in the Southeast, right? But I like having, I've had my snowfall. I've had my winter. Great. This feels like January. Now we're spring. Let's go. Let's go. I think that's a good question for our live chat tonight. Do you guys want more snow? I think there's so many of us are trying to repeat January 2022, where we had 3 weekends back to back with snow. We've got 2 now, 2 snow occurrences here in January 2025. Do we want more? That is the question. I'll also read a couple messages. Mitchell on YouTube, he lives 1 mile south of Mooresville, North Carolina, along NC 115 there. Just a light dusting enough to cover the cars. That certainly sounds about similar to my experience. Lori watching on Facebook just took my dog for a walk. Remaining snow already has ice on it, as we've been talking, that refreeze. If you got enough snow out there, and Frank mentioned this on Sunday night, it would be great for sleigh riding. When that refreezes and you get that icy surface on top, you're going to go fast. Going to go real fast. Jeremy on YouTube, I got 7 inches between Conway and Anor. I'm saying that right? Anor? Scotty's not here to correct me.
Ainer, I think.
Ainer.
I'm actually
I'm
not
sorry.
sure about that one.
We've been in this show 10 years, and I've come a long way in saying town names, but I still don't have them all.
Ainer, I hardly know her.
No. Crosshair, 18 degrees where I am. Would love to know where you are, but I think we can all agree it is certainly very, very cold. More video on your screen right now from Sam Walker along the Outer Banks. Look at those icicles. And look at the amount of snow he's got on his roof.
Like, this is amazing. This is just so, I mean, look at this. These are scenes we never see.
No. This, to me, you could tell me this is New Jersey.
Right.
And I'd be like, sure. Yeah. That sounds right.
Wow.
That's a lot of snow. That's a lot of weight on your roof there, Sam. Not that you had any way to get up there and get it down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think, but
look, there's the refreshment center in the snow.
Yeah. Hey, somebody's got to stay open and keep opening, right? So, Justin's watching on YouTube just outside. That's the Wilmington area there, I think, right? ILM.
Mm-hmm.
Jared shaking his head. Yes, 5 inches there, still on the ground. Roads are all very icy. Yeah, absolutely. If you're watching tonight inside, nice and warm, as I hope you are, that's a good place to be. And we already know that many school districts have made decisions for tomorrow to delay or cancel again, depending on what the local conditions are. I mean, you can see Sam's video here from today. I mean, look at these roads out there on the Outer Banks, and you can see the very popular spot here as you pull into the area just near the rest area and the Welcome Center. Very icy. And I know the DOT is working very hard. I'm not trying to shame them in any way, but I'm just trying to show you, right, the condition of the roads. Actually, we have a live camera out in Duck, North Carolina. If I can find that in my alphabet, I would very happily take you out there. It is not alphabetized correctly, but I have found it. So let's take a live look at Duck, North Carolina on the Outer Banks tonight. And you can see that road looks slick. I can see the black pavement, but I would hazard to guess there's some black ice out there in this spot or others that you'll need to watch for carefully if you are an essential worker who needs to be out. All right. Well, there is the shot from Duck last night as the snow was coming down. You can certainly see the way the flakes were blowing there. What a fabulous, fabulous time. E-learning, says Jeremy, for all of Horry County schools. We know here in Charlotte, we've got a 2-hour delay at Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Mitchell, I'll watch it on YouTube. We're calling the winter of 1976, 1977 in Kentucky, where Mitchell was. Got out of school for Christmas there and finally went back in February. That's a lot of snow.
That sounds pretty good.
Long. Wowzers. Wowzers. We know this was, again, a snowstorm that impacted so much of the region. Here's a look again at the numbers across South Carolina. We've got other news to get to tonight. Wildfires back in the news. It's deja vu all over again. Would love to still hear your snow reports as we continue on with the second half hour of our live program. We'll be back in 90 seconds here on the Carolina Weather Group.
Hi, podcast listeners. If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd love to start storm chasing, but I have no idea how to get started. Believe me, you're not alone. You can kick off your chasing adventure with Girls Who Chase on March 1st, 2025 at the Storm Chasing 101 training event we call Spring Training. The annual Spring Training event, and yes, the pun is intended, provides accessible, entry-level, and foundational information and training material for storm chasers at all levels. Spring trainees will range from those who want to begin their chase education or brush up on the basics, to more advanced chasers who want to learn more about in-depth specialized topics. Just like in baseball, we gather every spring to shake off the rust, refresh our skills, and get ready to hit a home run. Spring training is provided in partnership with the leading meteorology education organization, ComEt's MedEd program. This allows for the program to always be held virtually and remain affordable. Girls Who Chase is a global community, and we believe strongly in making science and learning accessible to everyone without the constraints of travel or financial hardship. And if you can't make it on March 1st, don't worry. All presentations will be recorded and made permanently available to registrants. To register and for information on the topics, speakers, and schedule as they become available, visit our website, girlswhochase.com/spring training. That's girlswhochase.com/spring training for more information. We hope to see you there.
We'll be learning more about that in the coming weeks, and I hope you guys get a chance to check out what an amazing event the Girls Who Chase are hosting. We were just talking about the snow here in the Carolinas, and we're going to transition our way on over talking about the ongoing wildfire threat. But let me actually bridge this by showing you some pictures WCNC obtained today of a large building fire that was burning in Gastonia, just to the west of Charlotte today. This started about 5 a.m. When the wind chill was 13 degrees. These firefighters battling a fire in a very large abandoned factory. And the fire chief told reporters that when they showed up, they encountered at least 2 frozen fire hydrants that they had to battle to get working. So not only are they exposed to the heat, exposed to these elements of frozen fire hydrants, and then a very large fire that you can actually see here. This is the WCNC weather camera on the Dallas transmitter that they have there. Dallas, North Carolina, just north of Gastonia, was able to get a bird's eye view of this fire. So yet again, a reminder of the impacts that this frigid cold weather has on us. But let's take you out to Los Angeles, where for now the 3rd straight week in a row, wildfires are continuing to burn. This is a camera in cooperation with UC San Diego, but we are looking at new fires burning tonight in Los Angeles. This video recorded in just the last 3 hours. This is a 3-hour time lapse, and watch as this fire grows into thousands of additional acres as this wind-driven fire near Los Angeles grows in intensity. We also have fires burning tonight and throughout the day near San Diego. Jared, it was 3 weeks ago on this show. We were talking about what we learned at IBHS. We were talking about the Santa Ana winds, and you were telling us you have family in California. They are in San Diego, you shared with us. How are they doing tonight?
Good news is that no news is good news. San Diego is a pretty large metro area, and most of my family is away from it. So that's great news. Happy to hear that. But certainly a very scary situation unfolding there. If there's one bit of good news, is that there is a pattern change coming, and they may actually have some rain finally moving back into Southern California at some point next week. See how that evolves. But they need it badly. This is their rainy season. This is not typically fire season. I think that's the one thing that is important to note. This is usually when Southern California gets its rain. That has not happened.
No, they are so incredibly behind on rainfall and have been experiencing just these out of control winds that is just causing quite the strange on firefighters and on residents. Los Angeles being such an interesting town, of course, home to Hollywood, home to so many TV cameras. We hope to not see fires like this anywhere, but on our show a week or so ago, we were recalling the fire in Tennessee some years back, right, near Dollywood. And we were kind of talking about how that fire still has scars on the ground there in Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, but it wasn't home to television broadcast networks or Hollywood studios. So the visuals didn't penetrate into the news the same way these fires in Los Angeles do. And I bring that up, guys, because I don't know if you've encountered this in your own content consumption, but so many of the shows that we watch and we listen to were either canceled or postponed or had to relocate. I was listening to Conan O'Brien Has a Friend. I don't know if you guys are familiar, of course, with the late night host Conan O'Brien, and his longtime personal assistant who does the podcast with him lost her home in the fire. And so suddenly all these people who we don't know, you don't know them, but they feel like people you know because they're in these different pieces of media you watch or you listen to, are very humanized all of a sudden because, we keep saying thousands of residents have been evacuated. And it's a unique microcosm where some of these thousands of residents are celebrities and we're hearing from them in ways that we wouldn't hear from them if these fires happened anywhere else. Tom, have you heard that in any of your entertainment consumption in your everyday life?
Well, I was just seeing here that there's 19,000 new residents that have been evacuated because of this new fire. So it goes to your point that this is affecting so many people. I've seen so many stories on social media, some where just everyday people are getting reunited with family or pets. There was one where this guy was reunited with his dog after several days, and
Yeah.
just to see this again and to see just that the image that you had there, the video of that fire growing over the course of 3 hours just goes to show how serious this is, and how so many people are going to continue to need our help as they rebuild from this.
Yeah, and by no means do I want to make this it's all about the celebrities story, but those are people who have platforms and microphones
Yeah.
that the average person doesn't have.
Mm.
And so to hear some of these stories is just really, really fascinating to me. Jared, what goes through your mind each day as you're looking at these headlines?
Fire is one of the things that I'm glad I don't have to deal with out here. Give me a hurricane, I can see it coming 5 days in advance. These fires spark up out, with very little advance warning, and then they burn 9,000 acres in a matter of hours. That's it's such a scary thing. I have friends in LA who have been, which I've been communicating with, and they're okay. But to get pictures of fires from their window, fortunately moving away from them, and then talking to them about evacuating, I mean, that hits hard. There's a human toll at the end of the day. It's going to be a little bit more, James, as you said, it's going to be a little bit more, front and center, because a lot of these are landmarks that, we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Through popular culture, through, kind of living legends, so to speak. But there's real people here too. I mean, there's, think about everybody, just the people who live there day to day. Los Angeles is massive. It's a massive metro area, and you hate it. You just hate it. And I feel like that. Again, just the best thing we can do is hope for a pattern change in rain, and it does look like that might be in the offing here, but that's not going to help us right now. But we need it. I mean, the crazy thing too, James, is that I look at all this and it's like I'm reminded how all this is connected.
Yeah.
The ridge in the west and the trough in the east is a big reason why we're dealing with some of the weather that we talked about in the first half of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like week after week we're like Santa Ana winds, big winds in California. We got this low and this high, and they're making these winds. And oh, by the way, that low's coming this way, and we're going to feel it as snow, which I'd much rather obviously feel it as snow than these devastating winds. But it has been quite something to watch. Mitchell on YouTube, prayers for your family. I hope they stay safe, as do we all, and all the people there in coastal California. I hope a situation like this does not come to the Carolinas or elsewhere. And if it ever were to unfortunately happen, I hope we continue to see the outpouring of support that we're seeing in California elsewhere. And speaking of support, we've been keeping a close eye on the ongoing recovery from Helene here in the Carolinas. And it's worth mentioning that President Trump has announced he will be in Western North Carolina on Friday to tour damage from the storm. So look for us to bring you some highlights of that on next week's podcast, as he will, in his first week here into his second term as president, be coming to Western North Carolina. I don't think we know specifically where or when or exactly on his itinerary, but that is currently our understanding, is that he will be there in Western North Carolina on Friday. I don't know, Tom, if you've heard anything additional.
I haven't yet, but I definitely know it's on the way. We'll be watching.
A couple more snow reports coming in before we get going on this Wednesday night. Jeremy on YouTube asking why the significant jump at the last minute to 1 to 2 to 4 to 6 of snow along the coast. I think that's a fair question. I mean, we were looking again at Monk's Corner on Sunday night. It said 4 inches. It got 4 inches. But I don't remember anybody on our Sunday night special coming in at 6, 7, 8, 9 inches. Frank, before we went on tonight, you were talking about the impacts, especially for areas along that North Carolina Outer Banks that sticks out there into the ocean. Do you think something at play there really amplified this?
Well, potentially, because the way the Outer Banks kind of sticks out, they're more likely to get hit by the storms on their way out. They as they intensify on their way out to sea, typically they are able to pull in more moisture off the Gulf Stream. So it doesn't really surprise me all that much that they ended up with pretty good snow. But yeah, it's a fair question as to why we had to jump from not a whole
Yeah.
lot of snow on Monday to all of a sudden, oh no, we're going to get 4 to 6 inches. That's a fair question. And actually, if you go back before Monday, we didn't have specific snowfall amounts in the forecast, but if you look at Sunday and earlier, there was a lot of concern that there could be a lot of snow. Some of the models were showing a really big winter storm, not only along the Gulf Coast, but up into the Carolinas too. Particularly the Canadian model, which was going bonkers and showing
It was.
something akin to the 1973 snowstorm down here in South
Mhm.
Carolina, maybe even worse than that. So yeah, it was very disconcerting that the models were showing a big snowstorm from 5 to 7 days out, and some like the Canadian that was going bonkers with the storm were consistent with it. And so that's very worrisome. But then this past weekend, the models kind of started backing further and further away from
Yeah.
this big storm idea and more toward this thing staying a weak storm that stays way to our south and east. And some of the models were showing not even snowing at all.
Right. So
Uh,
that I think you hit on something right there, right? It's kind of this probability. It's kind of this bell curve of like what we
Right.
think is most likely to happen, but there's still outside chances one way or the other. And we've been trying, I think, and I say this as like a broad weather industry, right? To communicate not only the impacts, but like the probability that different
Mhm.
things could happen as opposed to saying this is definitely what's going to happen. And I remember on Sunday night, and Frank, you brought this up, and I just found the moment, and I'm actually just going to put it on the screen from our stream on Sunday, where you were talking about the 1 in 10 chance of the higher, possibly higher snowfall amounts. And this was from the National Weather Service forecast. And I think it's just interesting to see how that matches up with what or did not happen. Because, for instance, 90% chance that this wasn't going to happen. It called for 6 inches of snow in Columbia. I don't think we got that, but it called
No.
for 5 inches in Myrtle Beach, and that did happen.
Right. It totally didn't happen along I-20, but along the coastal plain, just inland and over to the Grand Strand, sure did happen. The 1 in 10 thing, the thing we thought had a 1 in 10 chance of happening happened.
In some
So
places, right? So it's almost like, and I'm just
right.
processing this myself transparently. It's almost like we've got this probability that certain scenarios could happen, but not every area is uniform. So there was a 10% chance this could happen, and it did happen in Myrtle, but there was a 10% chance this could happen in Columbia, and it didn't happen in Columbia. So
Right.
it's like
And as a matter of fact, it
think of
was
it
off
as
by a factor of 4.
yeah, we can't think of it as like one scenario that won or lost. It's like a complicated mosaic.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily relate to, one point to another in this worst case scenario thing. Like, for example, again, it was off by a factor of 4 in Columbia, but it was almost right on the money in Myrtle Beach.
Mhm.
It was not far off in Charleston. Rock Hill, though, it was off by a factor of 4. The upstate, it was off by a factor of 8. There was about a quarter inch in Greenville and Spartanburg.
Yeah.
So it it's the
But
the worst case scenario for each point, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because, well, if the storm's tracking to the south and there could be 6 inches in Columbia, then the worst case scenario is probably a foot in Myrtle Beach. That's not how it works.
yeah, here is the official forecast on Sunday night. We were relaying from the National Weather Service, and I'm not trying to back up us over them. This is everyone just kind of at the end of every sports game going, What did we win? What did we lose? What plays can we improve on? Right. So we were, and I would say this is kind of give and take, because we even saw on Sunday night as we were zooming in, we were seeing like more micro areas, right, that we can kind of get different numbers. But like overall, we definitely overperformed in a lot of areas. When you look at like the broad forecast, I'm trying to get back to where I just was. There we go. Right. But I will say this. If you just look at the colors, and I don't mean that by like the intensity of like quarter, half, one. The areas that saw snow versus didn't see snow is pretty spot on in terms of where the freezing line was.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Raleigh, Charlotte, upstate. Some exceptions applied, but like overall, that kind of lines up. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, we'll take the extremities out of it. I mean, this played out pretty close to how we thought. And again, winter weather forecasting is hard, and in the South, it's impossible.
It is.
Like you run into so many different scenarios, and one thing that you don't want to do when you're messaging something this high impact is windshield wipe between the two. You'd have one model go boom, you'd have one model go bust. You want to play it, you want to play the probabilities, and you don't want to get too high on it. You don't want to get too low on it either. And so so the forecasters, we're looking for a preponderance of the evidence, right? We're looking for solid evidence, consistent evidence in the models to back up, going one way or the other. And something happened Tuesday morning, and that the storm overperformed like crazy in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And so when you see that overperformance, when you see that the early onset of the overrunning precipitation, you see the more northwestern onset of the precipitation, you've got to make some adjustments. And and there's the other thing of the warm nose. We talked about that earlier. Sleet, I mean, if you put back the southeast map, you can see where the sleet was dominant. See the lighter blue between Charleston and Savannah. I mean, that's where we had quite a bit of melting. Melting.
Was that just
loft.
pure warmer air coming off the ocean?
That's probably what it was. Although what was interesting is that when you look at the mandatory levels, the winds were out of the west at 850. At 700, they were a little bit. They were out of the southwest. That was your moisture transport. 925, they were out of the north. So there's somewhere in there, there may have been, just a layer of warm air that was just persistent, and it just didn't get nudged out of there. It's just fascinating. This stuff is so fascinating.
And it is hard, and that's not an excuse. It's hard to not only know on a normal day where the temperatures and the moisture are going to be, but when it comes to weather and the way those interact with each other, it's not only just what's rain, what's sleet, what's snow, but what type of snow, what's the ratio, how dense is this snow, because that's going to impact measurements. And I think there's a certain expectation, because of how rare snow is here, that we want to know down to the 10th of an inch how much snow we're going to get, as opposed to just saying 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4
and
inch.
It's impossible to forecast that.
It's impossible.
It's like the equivalent of forecasting where there will be 1/10 of an inch versus 15/100ths of an inch.
Yeah.
In summertime, and that's impossible, but you think no big deal. But when in the situation in the wintertime and it's snow instead, and that liquid equivalent in the cold situation like this, the ratio might be 12 or 15 to 1 instead of the usual 8 to 10 to 1 that you see around these here parts. So if instead of 1/10 of an inch of liquid, that's 1.2 inches of snow, or 1.5 inches of snow, if it's a deeper snow event, like suppose it's 4/10 of an inch of liquid, well, then it's it could be it could be 5 inches of snow, and if it's only 3/10 of an inch of liquid, then it's 3.5 inches of snow, and it makes a big difference with only a tiny difference in the amount of precipitation, liquid precipitation that falls. So you're asking us to do something that's beyond what can be done, and probably will not be able to be done in our lifetimes.
I don't know. Artificial intelligence is doing great. Sorry, that was supposed to be a joke.
I will say this. I will say this, and I want to make it completely clear. I think this is a very well forecast event.
I think it was too.
Yeah,
it was forecast well with respect to the fact that we knew a winter storm was coming from a week away.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're somebody who's really into weather and you were looking at it, or even if you're not into it, but you're concerned about a winter storm, you look at it and you see, well, there's a chance of snow. But if you're on social media, you're seeing people post these snow maps that make you go, oh my God, look what's about to happen. We're about to get this huge double-digit snowstorm. And then the next day, well, it's going to be a 7-inch snowstorm. The next day, it's going to be a 3-inch snowstorm. The next day, it's going to be an inch, maybe. And then the next day, it's going to be 4 inches after all.
You don't even have to go to social media, right, Tom, in order to see these outrageous forecasts?
Listen, Team iPhone here, all the way. My brother, who lives in James Island, not too far from you, Jared, sent me this picture here saying 14 inches of snow for Charleston.
And this isn't a forecast. This is telling you what has occurred.
Yes, if you're listening now, we're showing you a screen with precipitation totals. It says past 24 hours snow, and then right next to it is 14 inches. Now,
nowhere in the Carolinas did that happen.
Nowhere. So again, Team iPhone all the way. At least speaking for myself, but this is just way off.
Is this Apple weather?
Yeah.
I'm really curious how this happens because this was taken this morning at 6:46.
I'll tell you what. Apple weather is circling the drain. It's gone down the toilet. It's circling the drain.
It's known terrible.
It is, and I've gotten, just in the lead up to the event, a lot of questions like, why does my app say this? Why does my app say that? My app says 12 inches. Right. I'm like, that's not even close to what we think will happen. It was like,
no.
And then people hold the actual meteorologists accountable for a forecast they didn't make. Don't do that.
My phone
Don't
says.
do that. Your phone, it's that, like
I think
we said,
the equivalent of that. The equivalent of that would be like going into a NFL game, looking at the highs and the lows, and making a bet, and then the coach does something, and you're like, "That's not what my app said was going to happen." And it's like, you're holding the coach accountable for what your sports betting app said might happen. Like those two things are not the same.
Exactly.
Right.
People, they pick up their phone and look at the app and see what the Apple app is calling for, and they tell their friends, well, they're calling for.
Right. Who's they? Also, just to be clear, I know this is not a phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
just so we're
just getting a little concerned there.
But it does
anytime
give
you
me
hear
better
someone say
forecasting than Apple.
they're calling for, ask them who they is. Is it your app or is it an actual meteorologist? If they're talking about a silly phone app. Now, qualify things. Crap apps like Apple's app, you shouldn't give them any credence at all, of course. Now, TV stations have their apps, and sometimes the forecast comes from that TV meteorologist. That's going to be a decent forecast. Sometimes it's AccuWeather's or the Weather Channel's app, and they actually do some actual work with the model data that comes in. Sometimes humans actually touch that forecast. You're going to get a decent forecast from them too. You may not get the depth that you need, but you're probably going to get a decent forecast for 68 chance of rain. But you'll get a decent forecast from those apps. But the Apple app, no, you're not, because that's all automated and it is junk.
And Tom, I have a theory about what happened with the Apple app.
Do tell.
Yeah.
Modeling was much more bullish on there being no warm nose or eroding the warm nose a lot sooner. And at those precipitation rates, we had some really bright bands over Charleston.
Oh yeah.
And
it's partly due to the sleet.
The sleet certainly doesn't hurt there. But with the precip rates the way they were, I wouldn't be shocked if, they're not using observations. It's just going completely off of the computer. They're not using the obs. And to be fair, we're not really getting like accumulation observations early in the event. That's not something that's really happening a lot. Happens more towards the end. You don't get a lot of that verification in the middle of it. So what I think happened is that the model snow ratio was out of control, and it looked at the precipitation that had fallen, which is observed, and made some assumptions that were very, very wrong. I'd have a lot happier people on James Island, quite frankly, if there had been 14 inches of snow.
Yeah,
I don't know. You can have too much
Right.
of a good thing. I think 14 inches
Yeah,
of snow
fair.
might be too much of a good thing.
Or Isle of Palms, where apparently there was a good bit of freezing rain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord knows was that thick there.
Yeah, there was I had freezing drizzle at the onset of the event, and I mean it was it was a tough forecast.
Yeah. I should correct myself, by the way. I say that sleet shows up really bright on the radar, but that's not what actually is happening over Charleston. You remember that Charleston's radar is well to the west, and the beam over Charleston is actually 4,000 feet at the lowest tilt. So what it was
Only
actually
4,000
picking up
feet,
on
says
was
Charlotte?
wow.
half melted snowflakes.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
it was picking, and then the sleet was freezing back to sleet below that.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
and
you're seeing
half melted snowflakes are really bright on radar.
Yeah, and again, we were, for those of you who were watching last night, as we were looking at the radar, we were looking at the correlation coefficient for something other than tornadoes, which was a lot of fun, by the way. I far prefer using correlation coefficient for winter weather than for looking for debris.
Yeah.
We made sure to correspond. It's like, hey, there's this bright band, and here's why. There's the melting that's happening there. The correlation coefficients went way down because of all the different types and shapes and sizes of targets that were in there because of the melting. And I'll tell you, I don't know how we did it without dual pole.
I don't know.
I don't remember how we did it without dual
The
pole.
clues are there, but it's a lot harder when all you have is reflectivity.
Yeah.
And you have to look at the higher tilts as well to pick up on where those bright bands are, and because you won't sometimes see them at the lower tilts.
Nope. Sure won't.
Also, and maybe we'll end on this note, a round of applause for all of our weather observers. M. Ping, Coco Ross. Thank you.
Amazing.
Because as
Amazing.
Jared said, in order to get these reports, it can be challenging. And whether you're giving them to Jared live time on the stream, or you're putting them into one of these actual apps that like shares data with meteorologists, thank you to everyone who stuck a ruler in the ground in their backyard. We couldn't have done it without you.
That, by the way, is the great value of social media, especially
Mm-hmm.
the app normally formerly called Twitter. It's now X, but you can put your ground truth on social media. You can say, hey, look what it's doing here. And somebody searching for snow can see your video. And it's like, oh, you're in Summerville, South Carolina. You've got the ground's covered and it's puking snow. So that's just the ground truth that people are looking for. And it's valuable to meteorologists and news people and so forth.
Yeah, I can't tell you just how valuable everyone's reports were last night, the M-pings and everything like that, because it helped calibrate what we were seeing on the radar with what was happening on the ground. And y'all have no idea how many people you helped, because those reports were also making their way to the Weather Service.
Mm-hmm.
And that was helping their meteorologists in real time too. So again,
golf clap.
Golf clap. Thank you. Yes.
Oh yeah, look
And
at that.
there you go. This was Lenoir County, 4.5 inches out there in the coast. Impressive. I got one more from Dare County here. I'm going to quickly upload, and we'll wrap things up. And I'll just say, if we get another snow event, Tom and I were on for one. Jared was on last night. We look forward to hanging out with you guys. Snow can be a lot of fun so long as we all practice it safely, and we enjoy doing those streams with you. And I've taken a snow measurement or two atop a trash can. Nice elevated surface, 7 inches here in Dare County. So. Nice job. Impressive. Awesome. That is going to do it. Barring any other snowstorms or weather next week, we look forward to speaking to Frank, that guy right down there, and Corey Davis from the Climate Office in North Carolina, the counterpart to the South Carolina Climate Office, to get a recap on how we did in 2024. I know that feels like a long, long time ago, and we want to. Now that all those numbers have been crunched and tabulated, get a climate recap. If we get any other whispers of any other snow events, of course, we'll bring them to you as best we can here on our weekly Wednesday night show. And as we had on Sunday night and as we had on Tuesday night, our additional live streams on YouTube and the like. But Jared, Tom, Frank, very good to see you. I hope everyone stays quite warm out there as we anxiously await the weekend warm up. But for now, from Charlotte, I'm James Brierton. We'll talk to you again real soon, everybody. Have a good night.